Hey friends, happy Friday. Today is Friday, August 11th, and we are in the midst of the Every Bit Counts challenge. If you've been following along, I'm doing a new preservation product or project every day, filming it, sharing with you, and I am loving the responses I'm getting for what you guys are putting up. You guys have got some really good ideas, and I've already made note of a bunch of them. I may not get to all of them or some of them in August, but the preserving doesn't stop after August 31st. So thank you. Keep the ideas coming. I love it. Today's project is going to be out of this book. Now, if you remember a couple of days ago, I made that sausage bean soup. The recipe is from this book. I hadn't had it yet because it hadn't been delivered, but I'd found the recipe as a preview of the book online. Here's the book. I got it, I guess it was 2 days ago now, and I've been looking through it. I'm so excited to have this book because I really enjoy pressure canning. You know, when you start out canning, most people start out with water bath canning or steam canning, which is very much the equivalent. And then you gradually graduate to the pressure canning. And it can be daunting, it can be scary, and that's perfectly normal to have a little anxiety over that. I did too for many years. It kind of prevented me from moving forward for many years. And I think it was in 2019 or 2020. It was either right before the pandemic or just as it had begun, because I got my canner for an amazing price, because now they're a little bit more expensive. And that's when I started. So I guess it's been about 3 years now. Haven't looked back. It's been such a blessing in so many ways. And so I implore you to think about that if that's on your journey, if that's one of your next steps. Start thinking about it. Just let it marinate in your heart and in your soul and see if that's right for you. So today we are doing the cabbage roll stuffing. This is on page 167 of the book. And again, the book is called The Complete Guide to Pressure Canning by Diane Devereaux. And so I have memories of being younger, and my mom, she's a great cook, but she had a repertoire of like the same 10 to 15 meals. She was a working mom too, and so I get it. Now I understand. You know, she had her go-tos, and one of her go-tos was stuffed cabbage, or what's it called? Haluki? Am I saying that right? Halupki? It's a Polish word, but it's basically cabbage that has been softened, the entire leaf, and in it is a beef rice mixture with garlic and onions and tomato sauce and tomatoes and some spices, and then it's rolled up. And then the cabbage rolls are put in like a 9x13 pan, covered with some more tomato sauce and maybe mozzarella cheese, and then baked. It's delicious. It is so good. It's one of my favorite things that my mom used to make. And I have made it since for my family, but I kind of do the deconstructed version. God bless her. I just don't have the time to roll those darn cabbage leaves and put them in the dish. So when I see it, I, have the utmost admiration for the person who did it, because I know the time and effort it takes. But I like the deconstructed version just as much, if not better. And so all that means is chopping your cabbage up, softening it in a large pan with some salt and pepper, maybe a little bit of oil, and just letting it kind of wilt down into those smaller chunks. Still having your rice, beef, tomato spiced mixture, throwing it all together and putting it in a casserole dish with melted mozzarella. It is so good, and it is one of our really favorite kind of comfort foods for the winter. And so when I saw this recipe, this is exactly what it's supposed to do and supposed to mimic, is this cabbage roll stuffing. So all it is beef, onion, garlic, carrots are in the recipe, but I'm not using carrots because I don't have carrots, but I have celery. So I'm gonna throw celery in, tomato sauce, smoked paprika, salt, pepper, little red pepper, and dehydrated or fresh parsley. I don't have fresh parsley, but I do have dehydrated parsley. So, and then when it's time in the midst of winter in one of those really, or fall when it's really busy and I need a quick dinner, I can take 2 quarts of this stuffing and just cook some rice. Hopefully I'll be able to go take a head of cabbage from out in the garden, and then I can kind of put it all together. So it's not a complete meal in a jar, but it's a really good head start. And so that's what we're gonna do today. Now the recipe calls for 4 pounds of meat, 2 pounds ground beef, 2 pounds ground pork. You saw in my pan, my cast iron dish, that I actually put in 6 pounds of ground beef. That is because this recipe is supposed to make approximately 4 quarts to pressure can, and you would take, depending upon how big of a casserole you're making, either 1 or 2 quarts to make your meal later on. So I am actually taking this recipe and amplifying it by half. So I'm 1.5 timesing the recipe, and I didn't really want to do ground pork. I only know this with ground beef, and so that's what I chose. So I have the 6 pounds of ground beef in my cast iron pan, or Dutch oven. It's a cast iron Dutch oven, really. And what's so great is I decided to do this morning, and so of course none of my meat was thawed, it was all frozen. And so it's a little bit of a hack that you can actually cook frozen ground beef like this, just throwing it into a Dutch oven, maybe putting a little bit of fat on the bottom. I put a little bit of bacon fat in, putting the lid on, and it might take about 30 minutes, especially since I have a large amount here, but checking it every 10 to 15 minutes, breaking it apart, and really then all the meat's gonna cook, and it just makes it even that much faster, so I didn't have to think last night about pulling that meat out. This is gonna go so quick, and I'm actually really excited about this project because it is gonna give us, like I said, a head start with a nice fall or winter meal, but it's also gonna be a really quick project for today because I have a lot to do. Okay, so like I said with the recipe, it calls for carrot. I'm using diced celery. It's gonna call for about 2 cups onion. I only have 1 onion left until my Azure order comes next week. So I'm gonna use some freeze-dried onion as well. Tomato sauce, tomato juice. These are home canned from last summer. In fact, you can see they're from August, so they're from last year's challenge. And then I need diced tomatoes, and so I've got 3 cans here. I buy these in bulk from Azure Standard. And then we've got our herbs and spices. So I have some dehydrated parsley that I'll add in, smoked paprika, Redmond real salt, ground pepper, and then some crushed red pepper also. Oh, and some garlic. We're gonna chop up some garlic. So let's check our meat. It's been going for about 30 minutes. It looks pretty well cooked through. I'm gonna leave the lid off now. I actually want some of this liquid in here to evaporate, but I'm gonna break it up. And then I'm just gonna start adding everything in and kind of making like this big kind of goulash soup type consistency, and then we can get it in our jars. Okay, already a lot of that liquid is evaporated, and I've got this broken up into some smaller chunks. I'm gonna start adding some spices, the onion, the garlic, and the tomatoes. Just kind of get everything in here together. How easy was that? And how beautiful does that look? It smells so good. I love when food in jars is not only useful but pretty. I'm just gonna take a bite because I wanna make sure it's seasoned correctly. Yep. I could actually use a little more heat, a little more crushed red pepper, but I won't do that for the sake of my children. And I can always season it as I'm cooking with everything else too when I open it up. So I'm gonna get these into my quart jars. My canner is on the stove starting to heat up. Let's get this processed. We're gonna leave about an inch of head space. Now don't be fooled, because you may think with this much tomatoes, the tomato sauce, the tomato juice, there's plenty of acidity. I don't need to pressure can this. Even though you may think it is safe because it's a tomato-based recipe, anything with meat needs to be pressure canned. It's just the way it is. That's how I operate. You obviously do what's best for you and your family in your own kitchen. But for my family's safety and my sake, as well as for my responsibility to you, I tell you the only way to do this is to either freeze it or pressure can it. So at my elevation, this is gonna go for an hour and a half, but I need to bring it up to 10 pounds of pressure first. There is a little bit left in the Dutch oven, and I'm just gonna use that for dinner tonight, because for dinner tonight, it's just me and the kids. My husband has to work. I have a jar of canned vegetable soup from last July. I'm gonna open this, add the rest of the beef mixture into here, and maybe have some zucchini bread with it, and that's gonna be dinner tonight. So the leftovers will be eaten tonight with our canned soup. That's why these come in so handy. All right, so 6 quarts are out. They are still very hot. You wanna make sure that when you're pressure canning, and I guess even really with steam and water bath canning, that you are gradually taking the jars out, right? Once the pressure goes to 0, I wait another good 20 minutes before I even take the weighted gauge off. And then I wait another 20, 30 minutes before I open the lid, and I don't even take the lid off all the way. I just kind of open it, crack it a little bit to let some air in, but not let it be overwhelming. And then another 30 minutes before I even take the jars out. You just want to make sure you're not having any thermal shock, because that is when the cracks happen and the huge messes occur, and you don't want that. All right, so I am so excited to have that done. This is a brand new canning project for me, but I am really trying to amp up our easy meals for this fall and this winter because I'm a working mom. My husband's a working dad, 2 busy kids with all kinds of sports and activities. And regardless if that's your life or not, we all need a little help every now and then with dinner. Stay healthy, stay well, and I will see you tomorrow. So at my elevation, this is gonna go for an hour and a half, but I need to bring it up to 10 pounds of pressure first. There is a little bit left in the Dutch oven, and I'm just gonna use that for dinner tonight because for dinner tonight, it's just me and the kids. My husband has to work. I have a jar of canned vegetable soup from last July. I'm gonna open this, add the rest of the beef mixture into here, and maybe have some zucchini bread with it, and that's gonna be dinner tonight. So the leftovers will be eaten tonight with our canned soup. That's why these come in so handy.